Good evening and welcome to All For Women's Football. We are back on a incredibly special 55th episode of Lower League Lingo. And no, it's not because Stu has managed to join us on a Wednesday evening. No, it's because the person just above them, we've got defender from Southampton Women's FC, Lucy Mear, and we'll be talking all about the Southern Region League and Southampton Women's after this. Yes, good evening. Hello, lovely to have your company, whether you are watching us live or, as many of you do, afterwards. Feel free to like, comment and subscribe. Welcome, everybody. Usually we pop around and see how everybody's doing. We'll talk to Gareth, we'll talk to Stuart a bit later on. There's people far more important to talk to today, and that is Lucy. So we're going to go straight into that. Lucy, lovely to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very good, thank you.
Excellent. Well, it is a pleasure to have you on, the first proper special guest that we've had on Lower League Lingo. So really, really good to have you here. We're going to kick off. Basically, it's sort of like a three-part show. The first part, we're going to talk a little bit with Lucy about the club, Southampton Women's FC. For those of you that don't know, blimey, are they a good side in terms of history, that's for sure. So lots to dig into there. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the league itself, the Southern Regional League that they are in Tier 5. We'll do a little bit of a run through on that, and then Lucy will drop off and enjoy the rest of her evening, and we will race around the other 7 leagues. So there we go. Very, very simple, very, very easy. And Lucy, we've got to talk a bit about what it's like to play for Southampton Women's FC. Now, for those that don't know, Southampton Women's are not affiliated with the men's side. That came a lot later, but you are playing for a side that have won the second most amount of FA Cups in the history of the competition. Obviously Arsenal winning 14, but you literally dominated the 70s. Couldn't be bothered in 74 and 77, obviously just runners up, let other people have a go. But other than that, smashed it. Absolutely smashed it. What is it like being able to play for a football team that has got that level of acclaim, even though you're not necessarily at the top end of the pyramid at the moment now?
Obviously, it's amazing to say that we've got that history at the club, and we're so lucky that we've had previous players come down, talk to the girls, talk to the youth, come see the first team, come to our games, and even send videos of good luck. So obviously it's always an honour. You've got to be proud to wear that badge with the history, and obviously you want to get it back to that standard. So obviously we've got future ambitions, but it's building blocks. So yeah, it's exciting and it's always nice to play.
Poor Gareth didn't see the private chat, so don't worry, he'll jump in just a second. That's not a problem. But I mean, also again, you think of the likes of Donny Rover Bells. They took over in the 80s. Arsenal took over in the 90s. It does seem to have been quite a bit of domination by particular teams. It's only really now that we're sort of seeing the growth of women's football really start to sprout, I suppose, because we're now seeing a lot more different teams win it. Granted, it's mainly United, Arsenal, City, that sort of people at the moment. But is that what you're seeing, even at Tier 5, that the game is growing at maybe not the fastest rate that we'd like it to go, but that it is growing and that we are seeing much more competition even down at grassroots?
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot more competitive. Obviously, I've been playing for quite a few years now. I'm one of the older players. So back when I was playing, when I was younger, I was growing up with the boys' football, and the women's football wasn't a really big thing. So it's definitely grown. There's lots more about it, bigger buzz in schools, etc. There's lots more girls coming through playing football. So that competition is always rising, and it is coming up through the tiers. So yeah, definitely. Things are changing, and I think money has a massive impact as well, though. If clubs have money in the lower tiers, then they seem to dominate leagues, which is expected because they can pull those players in. So, yeah, the competition's rising, things are changing, so it's really nice to see.
You touched on the playing with the boys team there, and I think that's something that you see a lot from kind of certain demographics of the players, whereas the younger players now coming through have been in various different academies and PGA teams and everything. what kind of was your experience going from boys teams and then through into senior football? Like, how did you get to where you are now from those boys teams?
Yeah, so obviously the boys teams, before it was I wouldn't get past the ball to start with because I was a girl. However, I'd start to throw myself around and they'd be like, okay, we can trust her. She can play football. So I think when I was younger, the physicality side of the boys football was really, really helpful for me going into senior football and growing up through that, because I wasn't scared to go in for a tackle. Not to say that those who have played with the girls are any less, but I just feel like the reducing of the fear going into the game and it just helped me massively. And as a defender, you need that for the big tackles.
And then kind of one of the students I teach is doing a project at the moment on ACLs. So I just want to touch on your return from your ACL injury. How was that recovery period for you, and kind of what support were you given by the club for that?
Yeah, so obviously ACL back in 2022, it was the worst experience of my life. Nothing that any player wants to go through. However, the club saved me from going to a really dark place, because there were times where you get lonely and you sit there and you think, oh, what's the point? I just shouldn't bother anymore. And if it wasn't for the club supporting me through the recovery process, so Sirens actually made sure that I had a role within the squad. So they ran this thing called Titan, an app where before training, the girls had to fill in the app, and that was their well-being. We were tracking their cycles. And my role was to sit there, go through the questionnaire, pass that over to the coaches before training so they can go, right, player A, B, and C, we need to reduce their workload because of the cycle, the part of their cycle that they're in. So I was able to help reduce what I had been through by making sure we didn't put players in those vulnerable situations. And just having me present and being on the sideline, having more of a coaching role really, really helped, because I was still involved and I was still around the supportive group that I had. So it was a hard experience, really, like mentally, really hard, because it was, you went forward 2 steps, but the step back was always really hard. But you had the coaches and the players around you to support you and push you through that, which massively, massively helped.
Working nicely, and then it wouldn't unmute. But just touching on the ACL, we were speaking backstage, and we were saying how in Stevenage we've got a player as well who's done her ACL, and she was finding that the hardest part of it actually is mental, because she's walking around as normal, everything appears normal, it feels normal, but in her head she knows she's not allowed to play football, even though she feels like she could just run on the pitch now and do it. Was that kind of your experience too? I know you said in your Facebook post, that the interview that you did, that it was different for everybody, but that mental challenge is probably the hardest one to overcome, more so than the physical part.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I'm a teacher as well, so I come from a very sporty background. PE, it's my job. Sport is my job. So you can't, when you're teaching, you can't go and join in with the kids. You can't run over and do some certain things, but you look fine, but you don't feel fine. And knowing that you can't go and let off all that energy and go and do the one thing that you love, it's really demoralizing. And like, when I went back to school, I was teaching by sitting on a chair at times because my knee would swell and I couldn't do anything. So yeah, mentally it is the massive challenge, and I think for some people it is make or break. So it's a really important part of recovery.
So if I could just come in here, Lucy, you kind of touched on something that I was quite interested in, and everyone talks about ACLs and sort of the negative side of things, but I don't think anyone that hasn't experienced it actually knows what it's like to be living with it on a day-to-day basis. Could you sort of describe sort of the most difficult elements of a daily routine, such as maybe even just stepping into, if you've got a shower which is in a bath, like could you even just step into that? Like, how does it affect you on a day-to-day basis, especially given your job?
Yeah, so I stayed with mum when I did it, because they had mechanical bed at the time, which obviously helped me get in and out of bed, and it meant I could keep my leg elevated. So that really helped my recovery. But in terms of the showering, etc., you had to get, because obviously you had all your stitches, you had to get a bag that went over your leg, and you couldn't get that wet. But then getting in, you had to. I didn't want anyone helping me in. I can do this by myself sort of person. So you'd sit on the side of the bath and you'd swivel yourself in. Then I had like a shower chair. So then you'd plop yourself on there. But that in itself is just horrendous, because you're like, I can't even stand up and shower properly. Like I have to sit here because my leg physically can't take it. So life was very hard. And even if I wanted help, like a drink, for example, I couldn't go down the stairs. So I had to get mum to help me down the stairs. I'd get down the stairs, but I'd have to stay downstairs. And then if I wanted to go upstairs, someone would come with me to check that I got up okay. So it has a massive impact. And at the start, I had people dropping me into work to make sure that obviously I could drive, but it was just to keep it safe, because I would get tired and my leg would get very tired. So didn't want to overdo it. So it is a struggle. You had at work, our Astro and our netball courts are right at the top of the school. So you have to go up multiple steps. So for the first couple of months back, I couldn't go up. I had to take other lessons and we would swap. So it didn't create trouble. It just meant that we had to adapt in school as well. So you feel a little bit of a burden. So it affects you a lot.
Do you know of many other players that have not been able to work and have lost an income because of these injuries?
Yeah, so I've known some people where the school or work haven't necessarily been very supportive. I was very, very lucky that they were like, take the time that you need, and they made sure that I was right before coming back in, because obviously if I came in too early and we took a massive step back, it would actually be more of a problem for them. But I know people obviously who are in jobs where they need to be in, and if they're not in, they're not getting paid. And obviously being in the teaching career, there's a lot of them who come through training. In training you don't get paid. If you're not in school and you can't go to work outside of school, then you're just sat at home, and it's really hard because you miss out on a lot.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that people miss and they don't really think about. It's just the general day-to-day bit. Yeah, missing the football is hard, and it's great that Sirens kept you involved. But like you say, yeah, little things like we all know what it's like where you've maybe gone down and you've got your snacks, sat down by the TV, and you realise, I left a cup of tea or something in the kitchen. We have the luxury of being able to just sort of nip up, go get it in. It might seem that 10-second walk is like, can I really be bothered? But then you're just thinking, this is a 10-second walk. It's like a 10-minute exercise.
Yeah.
Are there many more protections nowadays, such as more clubs that you're aware of offering sort of more insurance to sort of cover those sorts of injuries?
I know that a lot of clubs kind of encourage players to go and look for insurance. I know when I was at Moneyfields, that was a thing that they did. I know at Southampton, I've always looked at coverage, but for me, I didn't do it until I'd done the ACL, because it wasn't like a worry for me as much. You didn't think anything like, I'm not going to do my ACL. But now I would encourage people to do it, because it is, when it happens, it's needed. You need that insurance.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a horrible thing, and we know there's loads and loads and loads of research going into it at the moment, and hopefully they'll start to work out why it is that it seems so rife in the women's game. But good to hear that in your experience, although it wasn't the most enjoyable experience you'll ever have in your life, it's certainly one that's turned you into the person that you are now, and that, I suppose, is the most positive thing that we can come out of that with. So well done for that. If we move on slightly to the club and how it's been going for you guys, it feels like you've had a sort of a bit of an up and down, topsy-turvy time, and perhaps you can elaborate on how your career intertwines with this. But obviously Aaron Smith, who is the chairman of the club now, he was the manager to begin with, and in 2023 he left. Obviously that was also the year of the Women's World Cup final, and then the opening day drama that the WNL loved to have there. So that's a good timestamp for when all of that was going on. He obviously left, like I said, just before that. a few of your players went as well. In the end, you ended up finishing in 10th place, and it was really a bit of a tricky one. You escaped relegation by 3 points after what looks like a fantastic March, 9 points being earned with wins over Torquay, wins over Portishead and Chelsea, and drawing with Torquay and Keynsham and Maidenhead, and those 9 points effectively keeping the side up. But the next season, obviously, and Stevenage have gone through this as well, it was a horrific year, ends up bringing you back down into the southern region. So talk to us a little bit about what the mood in the club has been like. We know that Aaron's returned. It was not looking good for Southampton, but he's now come back as the chairman. So just take us to the present day with Southampton Women's FC and how it is that the club's sort of turned the corner from that little dark period.
Yeah, so obviously I was playing before Aaron brought me in back in, I can't think, probably 2020, maybe a bit earlier. Obviously he was manager, things were going really well. But then he left along with other things happening in the club. And I think it was as a result of previous things. Relegation happened, and obviously relegation was a horrible thing to go through. No player really wants to go through it, but it's part of football, and it either makes or breaks you as a club, as a player, etc. So that was a really tough time for the club. However, 24 hours probably before the club was going to fold, we went through a really rough patch. I know that Aaron came in and he basically saved the club. It was no one was going to deal with anything, and he thought, no, I'm not going to let this happen. But that shows how much he cares for the club. And he's always been a big figure within Southampton Women's. And for him to step in and do that just shows how much he believed in the club and knew where they could be at, because we've been pushing for tier 3 before. And that is the aim of the club. Like, this club wants to be back in tier 4, pushing for tier 3. But where we've had that relegation, etc., it's the building blocks to get back into that situation. So yeah, it's going in the right direction. It's just going to take a little while. It's not going to be something that's fixed overnight. But the girls are really positive. We've got lots of good things going on at the club. For example, our kit we've got from Kit and Bone Man, and it's really nice kit. And I know that Aaron had a lot to do with the design, etc., which was really nice. The girls love being in it, and yourself, of course. So yeah, that's really nice. I don't know if you guys know, we've got the no bounce bras that came in and sponsored. So all of the girls in the first team got free no bounce bras, which they're really good, really, really good. So we can't fault them. And I know that trickled down into the youth. So the club's doing really good things. We're bringing in sponsors. We're looking to build back up. I know that another thing we've done is we've got female coaches within every age group, youth and senior. And that's a massive step, because you don't see enough women in coaching. So to give them that opportunity, and for some of the girls, it's really nice to have that female coach that you can go and talk to. So yeah, the club's doing really well. The positive environment. We've got a great bunch of girls that really, really want to do well and push on. And hopefully with the success that they're doing, everything they're doing, it will bring in players who want to succeed and do better. So yeah, we're going in the right direction. We're doing well.
You touch on that longer term goal of kind of getting back to the National League and then into the kind of Southern Premier Division. What are the aims for this season, both kind of the club's aims and also your personal ambition as well?
Well, obviously promotion is a lovely word that we all want, but we've got a very competitive league. There are lots of results that are upsetting people. So for example, Wickham, it looked like they were going to storm the league. However, in previous matches, they've dropped some points. So it's blown the league right open. And you've got teams such as Porchester bringing in big names, but also you've got teams that on a good day can do really well. Like us on a good day, I reckon we could have Wickham. I reckon we could have the likes of Portchie. But obviously there's a lot of things that tie into that. That's our aim as a group. Get back up to tier 4 and then see what happens from there as a group. But in terms of myself, I want to be in tier 4. I feel that that's where I'm happiest playing, if not higher. But I know I'm coming back from ACL, etc., and lots of things going on in life. Being a teacher, not that easy. So yeah, tier 4 is where we all want to be.
Yeah, we all know that Gareth's a teacher as well. So there he goes, 3 of us here, which is madness. Yes, so many people teaching and involved in football. You mentioned the league, and of course, this is generally a bit of a league roundup sort of show. So we'll take this moment to just throw your league up onto the screen. So there we go. And obviously, as we look at this division, as you've just said, lots happening within there. You've mentioned Wickham being right up near the top. Just make that a bit bigger for the people that are watching on iPhones and Androids. But there we go. So Wickham obviously doing incredibly well at the top of the division. But yourselves, even though you're sat in 5th, as you say there, still got the 2 games in hand. So actually it could just be a 6-point gap between you and them should you win those 2 games in hand. Winchester are obviously not too far off as well with games in hand. So there's a lot going on. As you mentioned, Portchester, 4 games in hand for them. So it is, as you say, a very, very, very competitive league. You said on your day you think you can have these teams, but I think the important question is first of all, do you think you can catch Wickham? I mean, you said that they've been doing incredibly well. They're doing all of the things they're supposed to do, but they have also dropped a few points. Are you hoping? Obviously, you're hoping they're going to drop a few more, but do you think they will? If you sort of remove yourself from the being in the Southampton women's, looking at how the whole season's gone so far, can you see them being caught, whether that be by you or others?
Yeah, definitely. Like in tier 5, a lot of things can happen, and I think there's a lot of factors. One thing I've noticed in tier 5 is the inconsistency of officiating. And I know that teams have been not necessarily hard done by, but have been affected by that. I mean, on the weekend, Winchester dropping points against Beaconsfield. Like, for Beaconsfield, that's great. Like, that could really help us out. But for us, we've got to go and, as Southampton, we've got to go and win all our games. And we know that. We've got to come out there and be the best we can every week. But that's the same with every team. But you can't guarantee that. Like, there are a lot of factors that can affect that, injury, etc. So I think there is a lot of points that can be taken off for the second half of the season. Like, for example, we've got to play Wickham twice. So we've got some big games. We've got to play Winchester. We've got to play Portchester. So we've got some big names that we've got to play. But so have Wickham. They've played a lot of easier teams within the league. Not easier, sorry. Teams at the bottom half of the league. So, yeah, there's a lot of points that could be stolen. But everyone's going into every game trying to win. And you've got to be on your game.
So you kind of mentioned those games against Wickham and some of those other trickier games. Do you think they're your toughest competitors and challenges for this season, or is there anything else that stands out to you as being particularly challenging?
Reading, again, another team that are very physical. They've got some good players. They've taken players from tier 4, as have others. So, yeah, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of teams. And anything can happen. I don't think you can predict anything in these lower leagues. There's so much movement within the top half of the table. So yeah, I couldn't put down like the team that's going to be the hardest, but there's a lot in there that could upset on any day.
Stu, do you have something you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I think the thing that's I've been in and around this division for a long, long time. I used to be a reserve team coach at Winchester City Flyers. And I always remember when I first joined, the thing that I was told in pre-season, it was, yeah, we don't really know our team until the end of September because we get the players that have tried for Portsmouth and Saints and Sirens. And then we're then competing with the likes of what would have been then Eastleigh and now sort of the Stonehams and Portchesters for all the other players. And one thing with the guy I used to coach with, Tom, we used to talk about when we would also see the sort of the under 10s, under 11s, under 12s, and we were like, there's some really good little players here. There's loads of teams. And seeing those players start to filter up at this level is something that really excited us, and that's the sort of thing that you are really starting to see in a lot of these clubs. Portchester have got themselves some really good young players. They've brought some in from Portsmouth's old reserve team from the National League. Southampton Sirens, as Lucy will tell you, their rebuild was based on a lot of young players. One of those players that we had at Moneyfields under 18s when I was there, a girl called Ella Wright, really, really promising player, training along the Moneyfields first team. She's made that move, and she was playing National League football, and she held her own. It was probably only a bit of experience and a bit of sort of biology that she was still only a 16, 17, 18-year-old girl that was kind of holding her back. And I think that will probably be what will hold Sirens back, if Lucy doesn't mind me saying. That level, with the amount of young players and the lack of experience there, this is really a transition year, for want of a better word. Their top three is realistic, and that would be a really good outcome given where the team and the whole club were 12 months ago. But they're going to be taking points off teams in and around them, and I think that race for the top six is going to be really, really interesting. You can see even now, just looking at the points difference between effectively the two divisions within that league, and it's brilliant that the fifth tier is possibly where the fourth tier was 6-7 years ago. Like, I don't know, Lucy, what would you say? You've played at that period where Southampton women were competing in the top 2, top 3 of the fourth tier. Can you see sort of similarities in level and like with these players coming through that I've mentioned?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, Ella coming through. Like, I think as a group we lack the experience, which you said. So we're a very young group, apart from myself, obviously. So that has a massive factor. But the youth coming through, they are brilliant, and you're seeing such an increase in standard. So yeah, no, I definitely see that, and I see the standards are a lot better than seasons ago. So the competition is a lot higher, and there's a lot more upset going through promotions in the league.
I'd probably argue that the top 6 of that division would probably hold their own in the Southwest National League tier. And there's probably a little bit of frustration with all of those coaches when they look at the teams above them, above them in the division, such as sort of Plymouth, Bournemouth Sports, that have come up through this division last year. Portishead, and they'll look at that and think, oh man, if there wasn't that bottleneck, we could just get up there. We could really do something. We could make that move into that division, get the vital income in that we need, and stabilise within that division. So yeah, really good league, really interesting watch, and it's one that I encourage anyone that's watching that lives locally to go out and pay attention to.
No, absolutely. And I suppose that the last thing to talk about, we do mention a little bit about the bottom half of the table as well. And Woodley and Badshot-Lee, they're obviously battling it out, it appears, for the bottom spot. Woodley with the games in hand, without wanting to put you in too delicate of a situation there, do you think that Woodley have got it in them to be able to pull back Badshot-Lee in those games in hand?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we played Woodley at the start of this year, and they gave us a good run for the first half. I think we were a little bit shocked. And that's the thing. I think some teams underestimate, but they've put in a few players that have played higher. So they are more than capable of nicking some points off people. And I really hope that they do, because some of the players they've got, they deserve it.
Fair enough. We will remove that down there just as we sort of say our goodbyes, really, Lucy. But it's been an absolute genuine pleasure to have you on the show. Really, really, really has been fascinating to run through all of those things. We, as a channel, wish you the very, very best in your division, and hopefully we'll be seeing you guys back in the WNL, where a team of your stature really deserves to be. So fantastic to have you with us. Gareth, Stewart, anything you need to add before Lucy goes off and relaxes?
No, just to echo what Barry said, I think the Tier 5 is a league that a sort of level that I love, and yeah, always appreciate getting to talk about it. So thank you very much.
Best wishes for the rest of the season, mate. Hope it all goes well, and you guys deserve every success.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Take care, everybody. That was Lucy Mear, the captain of Southampton Women's FC. Thank you very much for joining us. And with that in mind, as poor Lucy just disappears from the show, we go back to the normality of lower league lingo and the joys that brings. And it's of course incumbent on me to start now, because that was really weird starting in the southern parts. Let's be very, very clear on that. We're not used to doing that on this show. Instead, we are popping up to, if I can find it. Oh, I didn't change it. That's why you can do the northeast first. Gaz, that's what you can do there. So there we go. The Northeast Women's Regional League Premier Division. A few things happening there. Bradford looking pretty good. Thornaby not quite where they'd want to be, but probably the only side likely to give them a bit of a challenge. And of course, it's all happening down the bottom. So anything you can tell us about this one, Gaz, feel free.
I will do, but I think Stu wants to jump in very quickly.
I do. I have to say my goodbyes as well, I'm afraid. Yes, we have some important things to do. But yeah, I'm lovely to speak to you guys. Hopefully we'll be able to speak soon.
No worries, Stu. Thanks very much for being with us as well. I hope everything's all right down that side. Thank you. And then there was two, Gaz. Then there was two. It's going to be just me left in a minute, and that's a sad state of affairs for anybody. Yes, the Northeast Premier Division. Go for it.
Yes. Again, it seems that every time we kind of mention some of these leagues, there's not been huge amounts of games, but actually, there's been more than I expected played in the Northeast. Thornaby are where they are because I think what the biggest change compared to last time we spoke is that number one in the L column for Bradford. They this past weekend lost 4-1 against Thornaby, which very much puts them in that title fight. They've got those two games. If they win those two games, they are 2 points back. It is still advantage Bradford at this stage, but as we see from sides kind of lower down, Ponteland have 5 games in hand, so that's another 15 points they could bring in. That could move them sort of there or thereabouts into the title fight. They did drop points again though, with a 3-3 draw against Ossett United. So it does look at the moment as if it's going to be kind of Thornaby and Bradford really pushing on and vying for that title. Another huge result from this past weekend, Sunderland West End ladies lost 3-1 against Brunsmere Athletic, which, looking at the kind of way that things are in the table, may not be hugely surprising, but Wallsend got their first win of the season, beating Alnwick Town 1-0. So picking up their first 3 points of the season, moving them out of that relegation zone. Sunderland West End dropping in, even though on paper Sunderland should be on 4 points. They're not, and so they are down there in that relegation zone now as a result of what will be a massive result for Wallsend. They will be hoping that can kickstart something, that they can push on, and that they can kind of look to pick up some other wins against some of those sides down there around them. And Bradford next week will be looking to bounce back. Just have a quick cast of my eye over what games are to come this coming weekend. So this coming weekend, Wallsend will play Spennymoor away. South Shields host Alnwick. Ponteland host Bradford. So you imagine if Bradford win that may see off kind of some of that threat of Ponteland kind of charging a really obvious comeback. Thornaby have Sunderland West End. So you would expect that Thornaby will be keeping the pressure on. So it's down to Bradford to come out and get that bounce back win against Ponteland and assert their control back at the top of the table.
Absolutely that. I mean, it looks fascinating in terms of the potential that the division has certainly got. But as it stands, yes, it is looking very much like it will be a tricky little season to judge. Right, let's nip over to one of John's favourite places. That is the West Midlands Women's Football League Premier Division, and it's all cracking on over here, Gareth. It's quite something. So, looking at how the side is doing has kind of blown my mind a little bit, if I'm honest with you, with how good this division is actually looking. So, obviously, Redditch Borough and Lye Town are sat there, literally 1 point between them. But you've then got Shifnal Town in third, with 3 games in hand and only 5 points off the top. But you've also got Solihull Moors, who've also got 3 games in hand, which would only put them 1 behind the sides at the top. You've got Shrewsbury, who would be in exactly the same position with their games in hand. So technically, and I know that some of these teams may end up facing those teams that have got games in hand, so it may not quite be as cut and dried as that. Technically, any of the top 5 teams could still challenge for this title. Which is crazy, really, when you consider that 5th is on 17 and top is on 30. But there you go. Looking at the bottom half of the table, same sort of issue. Alvechurch on just the 4 points, but with 12 games played. Burton in 10th with 12 games played and on 6. But Camden Court with 2 games in hand, needing really just 2 points to get them out of the relegation zone. So fair few things happening there. Camden Court were supposed to play Port Vale at the weekend, but that was postponed, so it didn't happen, obviously. Hednesford managed to beat Burton Albion 2-0, hence why Burton is still very much in this relegation discussion. Solihull Moors beat Leek Town, which again is great news for them and why they are in the title race still. And Lye Town, of course, in second spot there, with a 4-1 win over Shifnal Town, the side just below. So Shifnal probably a little bit annoyed there that is what has dented their hopes ever so slightly. And of course, Shrewsbury lost to Redditch Borough at home 2-0. So that was a little bit of a nightmare for them. But when you start to look at what's coming up, just as you just said, it's still big games. Camden Court have got to go to Burton Albion. So there it is, straight away, just 2 points away from them. Burton could pull away and be 5 points clear with 2 games in hand for Camden Court. So still catchable, but it'd be a lot harder. But of course, a draw or a win for Camden Court would make that incredibly, incredibly close. Coventry Sphinx, happily in mid-table as it stands, but they've got to host Redditch Borough, who are obviously searching for the win in the league. Shifnal Town, they get to play Shrewsbury Town. So again, Shifnal playing those teams around them massively at the moment. And Alvechurch, bottom of the table, they will need to host Port Vale, who are not out of this relegation battle by any stretch of the imagination, and certainly would be dragged immediately back into it if Alvechurch can get themselves a cheeky little home win. Solihull Moors will be playing there, facing Hednesford Town, and Leek Town won't be playing in the division because they will be hosting Newcastle Town in the County Cup, which I assume is a postponed fixture that they need to catch up on. So fair few things happening here. John was disappointed he couldn't get on, wasn't he, guys? Because he really wanted to talk about this one, what with the top 5 teams all being on his bingo list, but sadly he did not manage it. So yeah, that's how that one is looking, and probably a sensible time just to jump down into the London and South East, which is again for me a fantastic league. It's been one of the ones that I've really, really enjoyed watching over the course of the last few years, because what it's given us is so much excitement. Don't forget, Fulham came from this division and are now flying high incredibly well in the WNL Southeast, and it's still kicking off over here massively. So Brentford, as you can see, top of the table, and without question, doing incredibly well. But despite that, there are still sides around them. Saltdean, with 3 games in hand, could very much take that top spot and indeed go 3 points clear. Barking probably out of it, you would imagine, but still sort of hanging around in 3rd spot. But Dartford, even though they're only on 25 points, have got 5 games in hand. So again, a win there of all of those games would put them on to 40 points. And that is an issue for Brentford, because that would put them into 2nd and that potentially put them level with Saltdean. So lots going on there. The bottom of the table, equally as tight, because Ebbsfleet United are on -2 points, which is never the best place to be. But Newhaven with 6 points and Sport London and Benfica on 7 points is, well, it's just wild, really, isn't it, to be sat there in that situation. The recent matches that have been played have again been quite something in terms of how the game has been going. They've mainly been playing League Cup, County Cup, those sorts of things. There's not been a huge amount of games being played. Dartford beat Aylesford towards the end of January, and Brentford absolutely battered Ebbsfleet 7-0, with Newhaven also beating Sport London, Saltdean beating Barking 5-0, and Sutton and Dorking was a postponed game. So in terms of recent results, it's been tricky. There's been lots of League Cup action going on in Tier 5, but there are some games coming up that will have a bit of an effect. Dartford will have one of their potential games in hand if there are other games that are postponed against Ashford Town, which is quite a little league to be fighting with there. Looking at Millwall, they've got to face London's Sport London Benfica. Newhaven will host Brentford, who are obviously still trying to win the league. You have got Saltdean facing Sutton, which is probably the biggest match between 2 teams that are near each other, and Dorking, who are mid-table but not really having the effect they probably want to have on the division this season, are facing Ebbsfleet. So yeah, Ebbsfleet and Newhaven with 2 very tricky matches there in order to try and catch up. Gareth, anything you want to add on either of the 2 leagues that we've just seen so far?
No, I just think, it's fantastic kind of how competitive a lot of these leagues are. I think what it is a shame that, you kind of get sides that are really struggling to compete. And I think, as far as women's football has come, there does often seem to be a side in each league that is really struggling. We'll kind of touch on the North again shortly, but yeah, I think that's a real shame. So, I hope that whatever issues Ebbsfleet United are having, because you don't lose all 10 of your games and lose 2 points in that time as well, if there aren't issues off the pitch as well as on it. So I hope that they can get sorted, and Brentford look good value for where they are, but Saltdean are right there chasing down their neck. It is a little bit mad that you've got Barking, who have played 6 games more than Dartford, but that seems to be the magic of Tier 5 this season. Some teams play, almost rounding out their season in February. Others will probably be going on till May. Yeah, the joys of Tier 5, I guess.
It really is the joys of Tier 5. It's absolute madness how they don't manage to get these leagues so they finish on something remotely similar to the rest. Well, it's unfortunate that Stu had to dip, because if he hadn't, we could have jumped him into the Southwest and got him to give us a little bit of a rundown as to where these teams are currently. But unfortunately, he's not here. So let's not cry over spilt stew, and instead, let's just look at how this division has got on. And again, this one is really tight, because the top 2 teams both have games in hand over the teams below them. So you would argue at this point in time, that's the old Gareth adage, is it better for them to have the points in on the board or the games in hand? Well, in this case, they've got both. So that surely must be the best answer in that one. If you can have both, that's got to 100% be the win, you would imagine. That seems to be the cheat code for this division. But it's a case still of will it be Torquay or will it be Forest Green? Forest Green with the game in hand over Torquay. And of course, if they win that, they will be level on points. It will come down to goal difference, which at the moment, Torquay United have the advantage in. You talk about teams at the bottom. Well, Bishop's Lydiard really struggling here. They've got 11 games lost, 34 negative goal difference, no points. And I mean, it pretty much looks like it will be game over if we are being honest. There's still 7 games in hand for Bishop's Lydiard. Sorry, 7 games in hand, 7 games to go for Bishop's Lydiard. And of course, within that, 21 points that could be available to them. But with the way the first half of this season has gone, it doesn't look too promising for them. Looking at some of the recent results, again, lots going on in the Cup at the moment. But Torquay United at the weekend did have a league match due to the fact that their cup match was a walkover against Pucklechurch Sports. So Torquay took the time to face Poole Town in mid-table and won 4-0, hence why they are 3 points clear of Forest Green Rovers at the moment. Previous games the week before involved Hampton Rangers losing 7-0 to Gloucester City, which was pretty big there. That's why Gloucester have jumped up into 7th. And of course, Torquay beating Saltash by just the 10 goals to 1. So Torquay really looking good up the top there. And when you consider that their last 2 games have seen them score 14 goals and only concede 1, then you're looking there at 13 goal difference. So they were on a level sort of goal difference with Forest Green, but just in those 2 games have really accelerated that and given themselves a huge advantage, as we said. Looking to next weekend, some pretty big games coming up. AEK Bocco, who are in 4th place, will be facing Saltash, so they will have the opportunity to try and pull back some of these sides above them if mistakes are made. Bishop's Lydiard will be facing Forest Green Rovers, which if you're Forest Green Rovers, you must be thinking is a positive. Sherborne Town will be facing Torquay United, which is a much tougher game for Torquay. So there is a very real chance that Forest Green could cut that lead at the top. And Gloucester City will be facing Frampton Rangers in the reverse match. So an opportunity for Frampton to try and get back ahead, although Gloucester have got a ridiculous number of games in hand. Again, as you said, Gareth, very much the beauty of Tier 5. I'm going to throw it over to the north just so that I can breathe for a minute. So there we go. We'll go into the northwest. Lots happening here, Gareth. And I think this is the one. I did highlight this somewhere, but this is the one where this weekend we could see technically our first relegation of the season with Curzon Ashton, where they are at the moment, and there's the 6 games left to play. They can only get 18 points. And obviously with Tranmere Rovers currently on 18 points, it's pretty much all but rubber stamped. But you can never say never in football.
Well, we can say never in terms of this weekend because it's a cup weekend. It's a League Cup weekend this weekend. So I believe all of the sides are in cup action. Actually, I lied to you. No, I didn't. All teams this weekend are in either the cup or the plate. Curzon could have been relegated at the weekend just gone. However, that their match against Fylde was postponed because Curzon Ashton could not field a side. You imagine then if the leagues are likely to be consistent, that could potentially come with a points deduction, as well as replaying that fixture. You would imagine then that by virtue of that game being postponed, that will be failure to fill a fixture, which will come with a points deduction. So you imagine that actually Curzon Ashton are kind of waiting for due process and will be relegated probably before they play another league game, which is unfortunate. It could have been this weekend as well, but Tranmere Rovers actually lost at the weekend. So, Curzon were kind of saved really by West Didsbury, who beat Tranmere 3-2. Naomi Lawrence hat trick was enough for West to take all 3 points. Kind of other games, we had Polton Vicks running out 4-0 winners against Fleetwood to keep the pressure on Tranmere, and kind of a big 3 points as they look to kind of make a claim on safety. I suspect that 5 points is tricky to overturn in 5 games when you've kind of got the record that Polton have got, but they'll have real belief now that they can go and they can kind of push on and get something from the league and stay up. And the kind of biggest game was Bolton Wanderers against Mancunian Unity. Bolton actually took a 1-0 lead in the first half, but Unity got it back in the second. You still expect Fylde to be in pole position to take that. I know I say kind of points on the board I generally prefer, but when you think that the game in hand that Fylde have got was Curzon Ashton, who have won 1 game, that game being against Fleetwood Town, who have won nothing. I think something seriously strange is going to have to happen for Fylde to not pick up the 3 points there and then move back ahead of Unity and have, like we say, both the points and the games in hand as well. So, yeah, when you've not lost a 3-point deficit in 4 games, feels like one you can overturn. So I think Fylde is still my team to win the title. But as we know, coming in second, you can be promoted on points per game. So I would expect both Mancunian Unity and AFC Fylde to be in the National League next season. One more game happened, and I wanted to kind of leave it until last to touch on it. But FC United hosted Crewe. Crewe won the game 2-1, but I don't know how much FC would be particularly. They would be disappointed to have lost the game, but it was a kind of a special weekend for them as a player of theirs. Emily Walton returned from an ACL injury after over 500 days since her last game. So a kind of special moment there, sharing about the result. But, a side that was in the relegation scrap for a lot of last season, to kind of be middling in the table, they've got games in hand on Darwin, Crewe, etc. I imagine they will be relatively comfortably, more or less, bang in the middle of the table, which is progression based on last season, and I think they will be happy with that. Just kind of a regular, relatively dull season in a good way. Like I say, this week is cup action, so I will just have a look at the upcoming fixtures and see if there are any that are particularly striking, and there are. Bolton Wanderers play Mancunian Unity again in the cup. Fylde will play Runcorn Linnets. Tranmere play West Didsbury again, this time in the cup. Fleetwood will be playing Blackpool. So Fleetwood at home against Blackpool. Not only is that a relatively local derby, but obviously Blackpool being in Tier 6, is that an opportunity for Fleetwood to get some wins? Likewise, Polton playing Radcliffe of Tier 6. Is that an opportunity for them to pick up and continue to build some momentum before they look to return? Well, I say to league action the week after. They won't be, because it's a County Cup week. So, the next set of games that we will be looking at for Tier 5 in the league is actually on the 22nd. So, yeah, they will be kind of, a couple of weeks away. So by the next time we talk about this league, it may look exactly the same as it does now.
Which is always a joy, Gareth. I find those runs to be just quite something, if I am honest. Right, let's move over to the East Midlands, which is, again, it's actually, I quite enjoy this league for a variety of different reasons. So here we go. Let's just throw that up a bit bigger again for those of you watching on a smaller screen. But a huge season so far for Chesterfield. Top of the table, 32 points, 4 points clear of Loughborough Foxes. Vixens just below them, but they do have the game in hand. Some fairly big results every result was a big result, really. But Gainsborough Trinity losing 2-0 to Wellingborough, which is huge when you look at where Wellingborough are in the table. There they were, bottom of the table with just the 3 points, and gained themselves another 3 from Gainsborough Trinity, who were, of course, a side that were not really fighting for the title, but were comfortably in the top half of the table. They're still relatively comfortable, but a little bit less comfortable than they would have been had they beaten the side at the bottom of the table. Mansfield Town are lost 2-1 to Loughborough Fox's Vixens, which has helped them to keep the pressure on Chesterfield when Chesterfield did not play. SJR Worksop lost 4-0 to Rotherham United, hence why Wellingborough had managed to pull at least one side back. And Stamford AFC matched what Wellingborough did by winning 3-1 against Anstey Nomads, just above them. So there's 3 sides now locked on 13 points. Mansfield, obviously, with the games in hand, and they could technically put themselves into the title race should they win all of those 5 games in hand. So you just can never quite tell what will happen there. But there are some fixtures obviously coming up, much like you just said, Gareth, though it won't be for a while because they've got the League Cup, obviously, to take place first on the 8th of February, and the week after that, it is a whole ream of County Cup matches. There will, however, be one league match being played on the 15th of February, and that is Stamford against SJR Workshop, and that is absolutely huge for me because, yes, SJR Workshop have got the 5 games in hand over the sides around them, but when you are in that relegation zone, winning or getting those points can be a bit of a nightmare. We were just talking with Southampton Women's FC defender Lucy Mear, and we spoke a lot about how a little run in March or a little run towards the late part of the season could really help. If Workshop can put together a little 9-pointer all of their own over the course of a month, then absolutely they will find themselves in a nice, safe position. But they will have to start that by getting the win against Stamford AFC in 2 weeks' time, or a week and a half. So there we go. Anstey will have the chance on the 22nd to pull away as well. They'll be facing Loughborough Foxes, which is, of course, not a very easy thing for them to do. SJR Workshop will have to face Mansfield Town, who will obviously be catchable at that point, and Stamford will be facing Wellingborough. Again, that could be huge. Just imagine if Workshop had managed to get a couple of wins and then Wellingborough get a win as well. We could be looking at a 5-way race to escape relegation, which I think would be quite something there, really, Gareth. That is a bit of a relegation run, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a kind of super competitive league. Obviously, you've got that title fight going on at the top, which, Chesterfield only having 3 games left to play blows my mind that there's a 9-team league, but never mind. But yeah, SGR Workshop, they are not even halfway through their season, so they definitely have the opportunity to kind of make a real run for it, and if they do, then you could be looking at Mansfield Gainsborough potentially being dragged into that. I think what the downside to situations like this, and is that we could end up with a situation where Stamford, Gainsborough, etc., finish their season and are waiting for SGR to play. And I think once your season finishes, you should pretty much know, or be within a week of knowing, what your fate is. You shouldn't have to kind of keep checking everything constantly to kind of get an idea about where you're going and what you're doing. So, hopefully that they can kind of stagger it and they can finish it at a good point. But yeah, what a crazy relegation scrap that's looking to be.
You're not kidding. And again, this division had this same problem happen. I think Anstey Nomads were in a situation where their league season finished incredibly late last season. So this division is a little bit famed for having a whole bunch of sides that have completed their league while sort of 4 or 5 other teams keep on going. So, yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how that goes. And it leaves us with one more division to take a squint at, and here it is. It is the Eastern region, and again, this particular division is looking incredibly competitive in some places, but at the moment, not so competitive in others. And it tells a bit of an interesting story, but it's all very, very based on what could happen at the moment, obviously, as opposed to what is likely to happen. So you can see top of the table is Stevenage, and they are having a belting season. They really, really are still unbeaten in the league. They went the entirety of 2025 without losing a league game, and 2026 has started in a very, very similar fashion. But as with all of the other divisions that we have been looking at, January was a bit of a weird one. There was a couple of league matches that took place in the 4th and the 11th, and even one on the 18th. But the 18th was mostly County Cup matches. This week was League Cup matches and League Plate matches that were taking place. So it really has been a case of trying to find the occasional game as and where you possibly can. And there has been some big ones. Bowers and Pitsea, as you see, right on the edge of the relegation zone there, with a massive 4-0 win over Haringey Borough on the 25th of January, which is absolutely wild when you consider the position they're in. But perhaps less wild when you consider that this is a side that very much should be higher up in the league. Evie Clark didn't manage to score in that game, which is a bit of a surprise because she has, without question, been their top marksman. As we look at the Harpenden Town Atletico London match as well, Atletico London won 3-1 there against Harpenden. And this is why it's a little bit of a wild league, because within the League Cup, Harpenden Town and Bowers and Pitsea have all been doing incredibly well. Bowers and Pitsea beating St Albans. They've now made it into the League Cup semi-final. Harpenden beating Enfield. They've now made it into the League Cup semi-final. And it's just quite an interesting situation, whereas Haringey Borough obviously lost one of their games, the initial game in the League Cup, and as a result, they're now in the League Plate semi-final, having beaten Dunstable Town in Tier 6. So very, very interesting to see how the cup matches have been going on around about in this division. But it is also interesting to see how the relegation zone is looking. There are just 7 games remaining for Hutton to save their season. The win for Bowers and Pitsea really did put the cat amongst the pigeons, because it now means that Enfield are 9 points behind them. Hutton are 13 points behind them. And although there is still games remaining, I can't see. I can't see a way in which either of those two teams really manage to escape. It would take Bowers and Pitsea, Watford, and Harpenden to just absolutely capitulate in order for either of these two teams to then also enter a run of games and a situation whereby they could possibly string together some results that would get them out of this situation. And have we got fixtures coming up that could do that? Possibly not. This weekend, Enfield have got to go to Atletico London, who are obviously still harbouring hopes that Stevenage and Royston will slip up in 3 or 4 of their games that are coming up, in the hope that they can remain somewhat within this title race. Haringey Borough have got Dussindale and Hellisden, which is the big one in terms of the battle of 4th place at the moment. Harpenden, though, will face Bowers and Pitsea. So it means that one of those teams is likely to pull away a bit further from the bottom 2, or they both do, just by an additional point. But sometimes that's all it takes. Hutton will face Watford Ladies Development. They're going to have to get 3 points there. If they don't, I mean, that's catastrophic. They've only got 18 points that can possibly be got. And at that point, Watford would already be on 22, which is as high as they can get. So this is what I mean. It doesn't look ideal for them. Stevenage will be hosting Wroxham. And at the moment, looking a little bit unsurmountable at the top there. But Royston Town will take pleasure in the fact that they do at least have one game in hand. They will be facing St Albans City at the weekend, which for them, they might see as another 3 points. And providing they keep the gap to 9 points, they win their game in hand, they go 6 points behind, and there is still a match against Stevenage to be played. So they could well cut it back to just 3 points, which would make it a very nervy ending to the season. But they won't play Stevenage until about 3 games before the end. So it could be not just nervy, but incredibly nervy. But it will also rely on Stevenage having lost and dropped points elsewhere. Another little fun fact, Royston could well be the ones that stop Stevenage from doing the treble. They will be facing them in the County Cup semi-final, and there is every chance that it will be a Stevenage against Royston Town League Cup final if Stevenage can get past Bowers and Pitsea. And of course, Royston would then need to get past Harpenden in their semi-finals. So who knows? Could be where we end up, but either way, one of those teams is going to win the league, and it's just a case of who. There we go. We've done the roundup, Gaza.
Smashed it.
Smashing indeed. But I'm a tiny bit annoyed with myself because I was talking to Lucy just before we all came on and went live and everybody else joined us. And as I spoke to Lucy Mear, defender for Southampton Women's FC, if you only just joined us, which 2 of you have, so hi to you. Go back to the beginning, watch it. But they are doing a fundraiser, and it's quite an interesting fundraiser. I'll just read out what it is that's happening. It's been organised by somebody called Alexander Rigby, and basically they're trying to raise £750 for them. They're coming together for a bit of a special fundraising challenge, and they're asking for support because women's football's growing, but player sponsorship a little bit difficult to secure, and we find that as well, even at Stevenage, that getting people to come and sponsor the players doesn't necessarily help. So they're just trying to raise some cash to kind of help cover sort of sponsorship things, and to do that over a 10-day period, every player in the squad is going to collectively accumulate a marathon distance. So they will all run about 26.2 miles over the course of 10 days. But on top of that, 2 of the coaches are also going to complete a full marathon. Now, the really disappointing thing for them was that they were going to do the marathon on a match day, running to deliver the match ball ahead of the game against Winchester. That was supposed to happen on the 1st of February, but annoyingly, that game was postponed. But I would imagine it was postponed in plenty of good time, because just imagine if they started running with the football and was then told it was being called off around about mile 19, you'd be a little bit annoyed about that, wouldn't you? So in that respect, probably a good thing that they didn't manage to do that bit. But I'm just putting into the chat the link. So if you're watching on YouTube and you can see it on the screen, that's there. Do feel free to jump on and help them to raise the few £100s they're looking for to cover player sponsorship. We'll also retweet it on our All for Women's Football page on Twitter, so you can see that there, or X if you are Elon Musk and thinking about suing. So there we go. Brilliant stuff. Gareth, I didn't get the chance to ask you how you were. I'll throw it in there now. Everything all right? We're nearly at half term, mate.
Yeah, fantastic. You know, a week and a half to go. I did wake up this morning, I think it was Thursday. So that was a traumatic moment when I realised that it's Wednesday, which is my busiest day of the week. But apart from that, you know, good to go. The negative thing about half term, though, is that means we're getting really close to exams. So that's pretty terrifying. So yeah, but apart from that, all good. You know, Wythenshawe back to the top of the league, you know, which you can never complain about. So I'd get that in there. And a fantastic opportunity for us this weekend as the Premier League trophy is coming to Wythenshawe. So
That's
looking forward to that.
Or if you reading your tweets, because the old Wythenshawe veterans are just taking the mickey a little bit. Is there somebody else potentially being signed that you're trying to get across the line quite fast, shall we say?
Well, I mean, I don't know where, I genuinely don't know where this came from, but yeah, we'll set up on TalkSport that Usain Bolt is is ready to go. I had no idea. I don't think any of us had any idea. I think that's kind of come from TalkSport, kind of asking him a question. But yeah, crazy. Crazy just been mentioned in that 2 sentences. I have absolutely no idea about anything. Yeah, it's just absolutely mad, isn't it? Like, surely not. But yeah, the Premier League trophy, which is United fans, Barry, might be as close as we're going to get to it for a while. So we shall see.
Indeed. Well, there we go. Great stuff. Well, very, very, very pleased to have had you with us. As you said, half term is coming. It does mean the exams are coming. Just like every cloud has a silver lining, every silver lining also has a cloud, and there it is. So, such is life. But it's been really good. If you haven't seen the beginning and you've just clicked on to the end, please do go back right to the very beginning of this show. We had an excellent 25-30 minutes with Southampton Women FC's Lucy Mear, defender, captain, and all-round good girl, to be honest with you. Really, really nice to have a good chat with her. Spoke about everything to do with Southampton Women's FC and looked in depth a little bit more at the Southern region in Tier 5, which I'm really pleased about because of all of our divisions, that one's probably the one that's got the least love so far on this channel. So I feel like we righted that wrong, and that can only be a good thing. Other than that, absolute pleasure to be with you, Gareth. Like I say, cheers to Stu for jumping on as well. We will be back on Monday, where we'll be having more conversations, I'm sure, about the WSL and I don't know, will Man City have absolutely battered Arsenal in the same way that they just did to Chelsea? Who knows? Who knows where we're going to be? But we will be on the channel Monday to talk about it, and next week we will be back here on Low League Lingo talking all about Tier 3 and 4. I'll tell you, we get into the business end of the season, and my goodness, I'm here for it, which is a good thing. See you next time. Good night.